Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the first in our four-part series on SSIP planning and action. The series is really planned to kind of orient or reorient you to our state systemic improvement plan, and also just kind of to remind folks of what our focus is with our SSIP and some of the work that's underway. I'm Kyla Patterson. I'm the Early Intervention Program Manager, and today I'm just going to be giving kind of an overview, an introduction to get this series started, and then in the subsequent sessions we'll be getting into a little bit more of the specifics around our primary kind of topics and activities. So the State Systemic Improvement Plan, we often use the acronym SSIP, but just a reminder for folks that it's a federally required comprehensive 6-year plan. So all states have an SSIP for Part C, and we are required to use that SSIP to improve an outcome, a child and or a family outcome that our state has chosen as our focus area. And another acronym reminder that that focus area or the outcome we're aiming to improve is called the State Identified Measurable Result, or the SIMR. It's really the improvement we want to see as a result of implementing our state systemic improvement plan. And in Virginia, our SIMR is improving positive social emotional skills, including social relationships. In thinking about how we would go about doing that, improving positive social emotional skills, including social relationships, and in talking with all kinds of stakeholders across the state, we really ended up with kind of 4 buckets of improvement activities that we wanted to look at. And so I want to just give a little overview of those 4, and then also talk a little bit about how those connect to what we are already doing in Virginia and what we focused on in our previous SSIP, our previous 6-year plan. So the first kind of set of improvement strategies are around eligibility and assessment practices, right? So making sure that we're gathering the right kind and amount of information related to social emotional development to make sure we're making good, accurate decisions about eligibility, and then that we have the information that we need to determine the child outcome status or the child's status compared to same age peers, that we have the information that we need for good service planning on the IFSP and for service delivery, which kind of connects us then to the next set of big improvement strategies, which are around ensuring that we're providing evidence-based service delivery that's supporting positive social emotional skills for all eligible infants and toddlers, and that we have appropriate intervention for those who may have a delay or a concern in social emotional development. In order for those 2 things to happen and to happen well and effectively, we have to have a workforce that's trained to do that work, and a workforce that has enough people and people who will stay and people who are diverse and represent the population that we serve. And so workforce is another big set of improvement activities that we're looking at. And then finally, data, and not just having data, but using data to understand who is and who is not benefiting from the improvement strategies that we're implementing in order to improve positive social emotional skills and social relationships, and understanding what those differences are, why they might be happening, and what we can do to make sure that all children and families are benefiting from our efforts to improve positive social emotional skills. And if you think about it, none of these are big, new, revolutionary things, right? So if you think about our past 6-year SSIP, we focused on a different outcome area, but we were still looking at these same sort of buckets of improvement strategies. So in eligibility determination and assessment, we did a lot of work around functional assessment and a consistent process for looking at a child's development compared to same age peers for that child outcome summary process. So now we're honing in on the specifics around social emotional development. When we think about functional assessment, we think about that child outcome summary process. Similar with service delivery practices, we focused a lot on caregiver coaching and natural learning environment practices. Those are core sort of evidence-based practices, no matter what a child's area of concern or a family's priorities might be. That's how we deliver services effectively. And so those are still the core strategies that we'll be using to support children's positive social emotional development. And we'll just be thinking about how do we make sure that we're using those strategies in a way that does support that particular focus area. Same with workforce. We have really strong professional development here in Virginia. We've been paying attention to workforce shortages and issues and how that impacts early intervention for a number of years now. Those efforts will continue, but we'll be thinking specifically about what are the sort of the knowledge and skills that all providers need in order to support positive social emotional development. Who are the people we need to add to our workforce or strengthen in our workforce for those children who may have specific delays or concerns in the area of infant mental health or early childhood mental health. So that aspect of workforce development. And then data, we've been working really hard to build and begin to use the data from Track It, knowing that ultimately, again, regardless of the outcome we're looking to improve, we've really got to be able to put that child outcome data that we can get from our data system together with other information, demographic information, reason for eligibility, services or amount of services received. Those are going to be the connections that allow us to figure out what's working, what's not working, why or why not, how we might make some changes to improve the outcomes that we're targeting. So lined up with those kind of big buckets, we've got a number of work groups that are underway. So the first one, which kind of relates to the service delivery aspect of things, is the pyramid model. We've got a group looking at the pyramid model, which is widely recognized as an effective way to sort of structure or frame our supports and services to children and families in order to have good, positive social emotional skill outcomes. And so at its core, or kind of like at its most basic, if you look at the illustration on the screen, really, it's just about thinking that there's a group of children, most children at the bottom in that blue area, where they don't have delays in social emotional development. But we want to make sure it stays that way, right? So how are we supporting families to promote those children's continued growth and positive social emotional skills? And then in the middle, in the green, a smaller number of children that we see have risk factors that might impact their social emotional development. So how do we need to think about supporting those children and families? Are there some targeted interventions or strategies that we need to think about to make sure those children continue to do well in that area of development, or to mitigate some of those risk factors? And then finally, at the top of the pyramid, a small number of children will have delays or significant concerns in the area of social emotional development or mental health. And so what does our system provide and need to provide for those children to address their needs? And in some ways, to me, this is sort of how we do early intervention, period, right? An IFSP is structured to address each individual child's strengths and needs. Some children need more or different things, and this helps us think about this specific to social emotional development. So that's the pyramid model work group. And then we have 2 work groups actually thinking about kind of screening, eligibility, assessment. One has been working on screening and assessment tools and processes, just thinking about that area of development, social emotional development. How can we make sure that the information we're gathering for eligibility determination and assessment for service planning is doing a good job covering that area so that we have enough information? And then there's a second work group that's looking at kind of related factors, things that impact a child's social emotional development but aren't directly measured by our typical, kind of screening and assessment tools. So that might be child factors like temperament, or it might be attachment. It might be family factors. What else is happening in that family that might be impacting the child's social emotional development? And then finally, we have a work group looking at reflective supervision, because this is hard work, right? And the more we focus and hone in on social emotional development, the more we're thinking about the impacts on children and families, and talking about trauma and other hard topics, right? So we want to make sure that we're supporting our workforce, our practitioners, so that they're in a good place to support the children and families that they're working with, right? And you can think of reflective supervision falling into that workforce category in a couple of ways, at least in my opinion. In some ways, it's professional development, right? That reflective supervisor is helping that practitioner think about their work and expand their skills. But it's also about sustaining our workforce, growing it, recruiting and retaining, right? Because practitioners are much more likely to stay, or to even to come into a program that where they're getting the support that they need. So those are the 3 sort of work groups. There are 4 total, but the 3 kind of topic areas that we're looking at right now. And those align then with the 3 subsequent sessions of our SSIP planning and action series. So there'll be one on each of those topics, where you'll have an opportunity to hear a little bit more about what those work groups are doing, and to ask some questions about that. And then finally, I'll just put in a plug about the fact that we want to make sure you're staying informed. We want you to be engaged with us in this work, and the best way to sort of know what's happening and stay up to date are really these 2 mechanisms, I think. One is that our monthly Infant and Toddler Connection of Virginia update always has a section on the SSIP and what's happening, and often has related articles or topics, that have to do with our focus on social emotional development. So that's a good resource. The other is to know that we do have an SSIP page on our Infant and Toddler Connection of Virginia website. So if you go to the About ITCVA section of our website, you can find the SSIP section. And that includes documents like our plan, where you can look at the specific activities that are planned over the 6 years, what the timelines are. But it's also got meeting notes from all of those work groups that I just talked about. So if you're interested in reading what they're discussing, that kind of thing, drafts or ideas, then you can find that information here in the section of our website as well. And so I will stop there. I know this is just a kind of a quick overview, a quick introduction, but we did want to allow some time if you have general questions about the SSIP, sort of what's going on, or any other aspects of our planning and our work. Feel free to use the chat or to unmute either way if you have a question or a comment. And Corey, I know you're kind of behind the scenes. I don't know if I can see the chat, so I might need somebody to help keep an eye on that if there are questions there.
I am watching. So far, nothing is in there right now.
Okay. Well, while we wait to see if anyone adds any questions, I'll give a plug then for the second of our 4 SSIP and SSIP Planning and Action webinars that'll take place a week from today at 3 o'clock. And Ann Brager, one of our technical assistance consultants, who's doing, providing a lot of leadership around our SSIP work this cycle, will be talking about the pyramid model framework and the work that's happening on that topic. I know that the registration, if you tried to register for the series in the last couple of days, was closed. It gets closed close to webinar time because it's hard to manage a lot of last minute registrations, but an email blast will go out around 4 o'clock this afternoon, indicating that registration has reopened. So if you know folks who had hoped to participate today but weren't registered, you can let them know that they can then register using that link, that it will be reopened until September 12th.
And Kyla's all is quiet in chat.
All righty. I'll give folks just another minute or so if they want to add any questions. Otherwise, my email address is here, and you are always welcome to contact me if you have any questions or comments related to the SSIP.
I think the other thing we could add, Kyla, is just, again, if you have colleagues who are interested, these are being recorded, and they will all be housed together on the VEIPD Center site if people want to access it at different times.
Great, thanks for that reminder.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that is all I had for today. These are designed to just be short, quick overviews. We recognize you're busy, so I'll hang on for another couple minutes to see if any questions come in, but otherwise, thanks for your time today, and please enjoy the rest of your afternoon.